Right, welcome to Unit 2. I'm going to get you started and you'll have a couple of hours to work on this before we meet again at 4:30 to recap. So today's objectives, we're going to look at the media pieces and give you an idea and model to you what exactly the work is around the media pieces. This will be done systematically through the week, and that way you'll be able to draw from that and synthesize and frame your sort of piece on the three media pieces. By Friday, you'll have got into a routine about doing it. We'll begin a reflection on the nature and the objectives of educational research, and that's going to feed into your assignment 1, so you'll be able to finish that tonight. We'll also examine the various stages of the research process in their sequence. We will explore the rationale of each stage of this research process and get you in little groups to think about it and to think about the challenges and the opportunities. And then we'll adopt a practitioner's perspective. Yeah, we've seen that on the opportunities and challenges. And we will examine to what degree various options offer themselves to a researcher when contemplating the stages of the research process. So the choices that we have. Obviously, it's a linear process. We don't have that much choice in terms of which stage goes in sequence, but we have at each stage certain choices that we have. And finally, we'll examine some of the external variables that also influence the research process. So sometimes in these manuals, you'll see the linear process explained in a very neutral way, but it's good to look at it in context. It's not just your research question. It's not just your research topic. There's actually variables around you that will influence, considerably influence how you are framing your question or moving forward. So these media pieces, you're going to have a practice today. You have 2 pieces, and these are the kind of questions that I like you to look at. So every time it's going to be a media piece that talks about a ongoing research project or a potential research project. So you're going to have to think about what might be a good topic for educational research in the current climate. What are people interested in, right? I'm going to bring you back to this all the time. You can't look at a research question without looking at the target audience. So who's that target audience? And what do they want? What are they interested in? Is it teachers? Is it parents? Is it students themselves? So does the piece that you're looking at, does it fit this definition of an attractive research piece? Why? Again, what's the target audience? Who's this research being carried out for? What are the indications in the piece that you've read about the methodology chosen? And does this seem appropriate to you, or would you consider another way of approaching it? Sometimes you're going to find that even you disagree with the way the research question is put forward. So read the piece and try it out. You've got 2 forms, one for each piece. You have a piece from Forbes about education technology, and you have a piece from the Times Higher Education in England on tablets and laptops. So give it a try in the forums if you have time today. You don't need to do both, but maybe do one, and then I'll give you some feedback, and that'll be a sort of a modeling of the exercise that you have to do by Friday, basically, on 3 of these pieces. And you can use the same one. So the work that you're doing now is not necessarily wasted. It can lay the ground for your full piece when you get to it on Friday. The big question for us today is what is educational research and what is not. So you've got lots of different definitions, videos, chapters that I've added as resources for you to carry out this reflection. Here, I'm not going to debrief. I hope you take an hour or so tomorrow to begin this reflection. Then maybe we can talk about it at 4:30, and then you'll carry on in terms of completing your blog, and that will be the fruit of this reflection. Now, there's some pitfalls that can sort of warn you against. When I do this exercise live in class, many students will restrict their reflection to one methodology. They really are talking in quantitative terms. They're talking about hypotheses. Not every research, not every study in educational research uses a hypothesis. In fact, it's really only quantitative methodology that uses a hypothesis. And when we talk about proving or disproving, that's terminology that locks you in quantitative terminology. Same when you talk about validity. So be careful that you actually have a definition that is wide enough for you, and a conceptualization of educational research that's wide enough for you to be able to fit all the methodologies in there. You don't want to be sort of leaving out various approaches to research simply because it doesn't fit your definition. Be careful too about the notion of truth, right? It's all very well as soon as we talk about research and science, we're tempted to use the word truth, but I have to warn you there in a sort of very a very sort of big picture sort of comment. And taking you back to some of the philosophies of Immanuel Kant, is a German philosopher, I think in the 17th century, who has established, he's done huge sort of volumes on this, has established sort of as an area the notion of philosophy of science, and looking at what science can do and what cannot do. So drawing from that, drawing from Plato's myth of the cave, which we have a little cartoon animation looking at that you have on Moodle, be aware of the fact that no one ever purports to think that science takes us to truth. All scientists really and all philosophers of science really always see science as being it's a movement. It moves forward. It's a process. It's a momentum that takes us close to something, but not truth. It takes us ever closer to a perception, to an interpretation, to a conceptualization of the world around us as it is. But no scientist that really thinks about it, or no philosopher of science, or no theorist of science, ever sort of is as bold as saying that we can actually get to truth, get to the world as it is. The reason for that, you'll see it in the myth of the cave, is that we are locked in perceptions that are inherently limited by our senses. Therefore, from a purely philosophical sort of approach to science, we have to accept that actually seeing the world as it is beyond our human capacity in terms of empirical assessment. Now, through a process of reasoning and rigor, we can move forward to something that is closer and closer. So even the conceptualizer of philosophers in terms of science is always about this notion that these lines become more and more parallel, right? Closer and closer with time. We get closer and closer to what we call, I guess, an accurate view of the world that's around us, but never really truth, right? That's something that's really it's a general common term that we use in media, but it's not something you can use in science. Because even the most sort of positivists, and you will see, we'll look at theory in upcoming courses, but when you think about quantitative methodologies, usually it's people who are working from what we call a positivist theoretical position. So really, generally, they're natural science specialists, right? People who work in physics and mechanics and things like this. They really see the world very much in black and white in terms of hypotheses being proved or disproved. But even positivists that work in pure sciences do not have the ambition of purporting to be going to reaching a point where they are establishing truth. They understand that they are getting closer and closer and closer to an understanding of the world as it is, but that our senses inherently prevent us from ever getting there. So it's a road that will never stop. Now, it's a momentum, as I said, and we progress on that momentum. How do we progress on that momentum? By basically getting a piggy ride on the shoulders of the people that precede us. So it's very important that you understand that, because that's where the literature review positions itself. We take little steps, tiny little steps. So your research question is always something that is an area that's mostly been researched already, but you're taking a little step forward. And the way you take a little step forward in science is that you assess what everyone before you has done, and then you identify a gap, something that has not been done, and you move that field forward a tiny little bit. Always not purporting again to get to a conclusion or to truth, but just understanding that all you're doing is taking that step, and that someone else will pick up from where you've left and take it one little step further. Okay, this is really important in the way you frame your question as well. When we get to Wednesday and you frame your question, try not frame a question that is too general, because I think it's often a problem when we're young graduate students and we're designing questions. We want to we want to have answers to big questions, but we have to be humble in research and actually narrow this down to something which is feasible, to that little step which you can actually take, that little step which is realistic and pragmatic, not these giant big questions that are very wide open, but very specific questions that you'll be able to definitely get findings on, and that will move us collectively one little step further on that momentum towards a better understanding of the world that surrounds us. Okay, so it's important that you understand that. And I put a fun little video as well that you might watch on the Matrix. Matrix is actually a very, very interesting film, very intelligent film where there's lots of reference to philosophy. So if you watch the little video, you'll see it refers again to the myth of the cave of Plato, and it is a good illustration of this understanding that we have as a humanity, that in fact we can walk a little closer to a clear understanding of the world that surrounds us, but we can never get there, that we are locked there. So if you want, the prisoner is all of us. Yes, we can reason, yes, we can establish rigor, but in the end, all we ever see is the shadow on in the cave, and therefore we always are still prisoner of our senses and our perceptions, and we will never be able to truly see the world as it is. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. A little philosophical there, but it's really important that you understand these limitations, because in the way we formulate our process, and in the way we formulate our questions, we have to have this humbleness that we are just part of a little step that moves forward. Okay, so I hope that helps you for your blog post as well, and your overall understanding of how science presents itself, particularly how educational research presents itself. So you're going to continue that process, and then you will be finishing that in the blog tomorrow, which will be your own personal conclusion. Don't worry, it's the first part of the assignment, and then you revisit at the end. So it's not like you are supposed to have the answers now. It's more of a sort of bookend mark to see what you think now, and you're formulating things now, and how your thoughts are evolving. By the time you get to Friday, you'll be able to return to that assignment and see the difference in what you've in the way you're thinking and the way you're formulating certain concepts. What are the essential stages of educational research? So try and make it a little interactive. I know you can cheat, you can go straight on to the next slide, but it would be great if you pause this now and you exercised a little bit of reflection, and you try to really think as you begin the course, how many steps do you think there are? And then you'll check it against the next slide and see whether you're close or very far from the right number. And I think that'll be helpful for you to see how sometimes when we begin, we can be very simplistic in the way we see these stages. So I'll let you pause there, and then you will check. Why don't you write them down, and then you'll check in the next slide whether you got them right. Can there be any variations in this step? So this is an important point that I need to make now, because you will hit this concept of inductive versus deductive, and then you will wonder what it is, and you need to be clear on this concept as you move forward. So when we talk about inductive and deductive, we talk about the whole process of research, and mostly in most of science, you're going to see deductive processes. Deductive processes means that you start with a theory, and that theory guides you. A theory is a sort of a lens. It's like putting on a pair of sunglasses. It suddenly puts everything in contrast. You see things that you would not have seen before. So a theory is something very subjective in the end that we just pick up from someone else, an author, and when we adopt that, and that enables us to see the phenomenon in a clear way and to see what we might be able to do with data. So it is just that, literally a lens. So once you have a theory, it actually enables you to choose a methodology. That's what's going to guide you in choosing a methodology. And then once you've chosen your methodology, you start your data collection, and then you do your data analysis. That is a deductive process. It's a process basically which starts from a choice of theory, and that choice of theory leads you down that process. An inductive process is very rare, but it's completely the reverse. It's a process where in science we start with no theory, and we argue from the start that there's no theory, and we create theory from the data. So we start from the data and we end up with theory. So it's actually exactly the opposite of the normal process of research. An inductive process is going to be very attractive to you. So you'll see that the methodology that helps us do that is called grounded theory. grounded theory is not actually a theory. The terminology can be very misleading in this field. Grounded theory is actually a methodology, but it's a methodology that leads to the emergence of theory. That's why it's called grounded theory. So grounded theory is an inductive process, and what it does is it starts by looking in sort of a clean slate perspective at your data and purporting and asserting that there is no theory available. Now that's very rare because there actually are thousands of theories out there, but sometimes you can argue that there's no theory available. So when the net exploded in the year 2000, there were a lot of researchers who were actually doing grounded theory because suddenly they were confronted with virtual spaces, something that had never happened before. So there was an argument there to say we don't have theory that's applicable to that. And that's in situations like this that you'll see grounded theory happen. So the authors in those cases would argue, first of all, and it's quite a severe process, it's quite an arduous process because you have to stand the criticism of other people who are going to say, but I can see a theory that would fit this. So you have to argue that no theory that exists is suitable. And then you begin a process where you take the data without theory. And that's very hard because, as I said, theory normally is a lens that enables you to make sense of things. So if you don't have that, all you have is empirical data. But grounded theory is a very meticulous process that allows you, by repeated cycle, to wait till the data itself tells you something. So I won't go into it too much because we'll probably look at it when it comes to methodology. As much as you're attracted by it, every graduate student is attracted by it. It's very rare. Most of what you encounter every day is going to be just a deductive process. But inductive processes exist, and it's good to know that that tiny little percentage of studies can be inductive. So they will use grounded theory, and they will work from nothing. They will work from data, and through the very arduous process, that study isn't just going to come to findings. That study is actually going to produce theory that then will be available for further research. Okay, that's the difference between those two terms. So 90% of terms, 95% of the times, deductive process. Very, very few occasions where it's the contrary and it's an inductive process. And we can talk further about this when we get to methodology and we look at grounded theory as a methodology. So now that you've jotted down your ideas about the process of research, you can double check them on the Johnson and Christensen sort of PDF, which you have on Moodle. It's a table that's been extracted from that manual, adapted as well, I think. But anyway, it's okay as a reference if you just say it's from Christensen and Johnson and Christensen. They identify many different steps in the process. It's a very detailed analysis, so I bet you're going to have missed a few. It's normal. It's a very exhaustive sort of analysis of all the steps that exist. Now, in order to get into a little more detail, I'm going to assign you to 5 groups, and you are going to look at the pros and cons, the challenges and opportunities of those very sort of chunky steps. These 5s I've chosen because they are steps that probably would take a lot more time than the other steps. So if you can go to the thread with your group, it's not really group work in the sense you don't need to be synchronously talking to each other, but you'll be chatting with your other partners within the group and trying to together list the challenges and opportunities of these, again, fairly significant phases of the process of educational research. So I'll let you do that. That will be the interactive part for Unit 2. It would be wrong to stop there, but many people do, but it would be very wrong to stop there and sort of assume that the only consideration that you have when you're doing this process is yourself, your research questions, and the field and the phenomena that you're looking at. It's never that clear. There are many variables around you that will also influence the research process. And it's very important from the start that when you're a graduate student that you acknowledge those variables and that you address them. Funding. It's almost silly to be talking about research in a vacuum without talking to you about funding. The reality is that we rarely do, as academics, research if we don't have any funding. So the stunning part for you to realize right away is that there's probably 1,000 great topics out there that we could research, but we don't research them because we don't have funds to do it. Every process really is tied to a funding application. If the funding application fails, that project never happens. And it's not just that the good studies get funding and the other ones not. It's sort of vicious circle, because if you haven't had enough time to put in a very sustained, sort of careful funding application, you won't get the funding. Therefore, you won't do the research. And maybe there are other variables that stopped you from being, thorough enough in your funding application. So funding is a huge sort of obstacle, and you need to consider that. Collaboration as well. There's some great research questions out there, but often they sort of assume that we can be collaborative with people who actually in real life we don't collaborate much with. So sometimes some of these projects never happen because the bridges are not there, the relationships are not there. It would be great if we reached out to, but it never happens. Let me give you an example. It would be great if teachers did research with community workers, especially, for example, for youth at risk. But that never happens because they have different professions. They don't have those professional relationships, those professional contacts. So you never see this kind of research happening. And that's for lack of collaboration or collaborative bridges. Ethics. So towards the end of the week, we'll be talking about ethics. There are some beautiful questions that can be done, but they will never happen because you will never get ethics. Now, for you, it's particularly traumatizing because it is very hard, and we'll look at that, but just in a nutshell, it's impossible almost to go into classrooms and work with kids. And if you're working with kids at risk, as we are often doing in inclusion, it's even more difficult to ever do that. So there's a ton of great questions that we will just never have access to because there would be beautiful studies, but we'll never get ethics. And it's not wrong. Don't get frustrated. It's not wrong if we don't get ethics. We shouldn't be getting ethics because kids are in school. They're not lab rats. They're in school to learn. They're not in school to be as subjects. And so if ethics tell you this question is not going to happen, it's because as a teacher, you're paid to teach them. You're not paid to research them. And kids don't have a choice. They have to be in the classroom. So they're not voluntarily submitting to studies. They're there. And that's the reason why the schools will be very reluctant to let you approach these kids, because they inherently they haven't had informed consent. They don't have a choice about being in the classroom. So it's a very irregular place to try and contact research subjects. An example I usually give is, in different contexts, but the university, for example, there'd be some great, there's a huge percentage of students in higher education, for example, who are suffering from mental health issues, and that percentage is growing. It would be great to have more understanding about students with mental health disorders in universities. But now, if you think about designing the question, how would you ever approach them? Would you go to an accessibility office? They can't disclose. They'll never put you in contact with the students because this is all a registration that happens on the basis of confidentiality. You as an instructor can't reach out to your students and say, I'd like to do research on students who have mental health. Would you like to come forward? That's not going to be authorized in terms of ethics. So we know that population is there. We know it would make great studies. We know there's variables that we need to study, but we understand that from an ethical point of view, we'll never be able to actually access these participants. So those questions are out of bounds. So as you see, it's a very significant variable that affects the way we design questions. So again, you're not in a vacuum. You have to take into account these variables as you begin. Publication format and requirements. Often, to be honest, we're very rushed. And yes, there's probably 100 questions that we could research, but very often convenience is something that actually takes priority. One of the easiest ways of getting published, right? So normally you would do ethics, you would do the whole process, you would do data analysis, you would be ready for publication, and then you start sending it to a journal. It takes a long time for it to go through a journal revision process, and if someone then rejects you, you have to start again at the beginning. You can't send it to two journals at the same time. So sometimes you can be mucking around for a year, your article is ready, but it's not been published yet, and you're waiting for all of this review process, and you're waiting, if this one doesn't work, to send it to the next one. A much easier way to get published usually is that the journals are normally sending, they have special issues. And if a journal has a special issue, for example, a journal could have a special issue on, innovative inclusion practices in K-12. And then it will send out a call, and then it's waiting for people to find the call and to produce a study that fits the special issue. If you target it in this way, you have probably 300% more chance of being published right away. Because here's a journal that has an issue with a topic, you fit the topic, they tell you what they want to see, so you can design a study in line with what they're trying to see. And if you get it done on time, they have a need for articles that will fit that issue. So suddenly your potential being published explodes. So many people work like this all the time. You actually target special issues, and then you design your study in line with the need that's out there. And as I said to you from the beginning, it's about finding, it's a research question is always about the target audience. So this is an instance where the target audience has been identified. The journal has already said these are topics that need to be covered, and then you're basically working to order. You're saying the journal has told you they need articles on this, and then you work to this. So as you see, this has a huge impact too, because often for convenience we will work to order. We will work to the needs of a journal rather than doing just what we feel like doing. And then management of time. So there's some great studies out there, but we will never do them because if you are a researcher, you're also an academic, so you also have a balance of teaching and service. So if you're an academic, you're supposed to be spending 40% of your time on teaching, 40% of your time on research, and 20% of your time on service. Service could be sitting in committees, working with the community, supervising graduate students, things like that. So 40, 40, 20, that's the magical mix. So that's not much time, right? If you divide your year up, it's not that many months about doing, that you can dedicate to research. And some research projects are beautiful, but we know they will take hours and hours and hours. And again, unless you have funding, and then you can afford a research assistant that will actually be doing all the grunt work, then if you don't have that, then you have to do the data analysis, the data collection yourself. It's very time consuming. When we talk about the ambitions when you design your study, if you're doing qualitative work, for example, and you're working with the transcripts, right? You're doing long, semi-directive interviews where people tell you stories about their experiences. It's fascinating work. But you know what? I know when you're going to design your question, usually people say, "Oh, I'm gonna interview," and in your proposal you'll say, "I'm going to interview 15 people." 15 people, unstructured interviews. They're likely to talk to you for an hour. Every hour that you record takes 4 hours to transcribe. That's if you're an experienced transcriber, if someone who types fast and actually has a lot of experience. So an hour, 4 hours. If you've done 15 interviews, that's bad with math, but that's 60 hours of transcripts. That's, you can't commit to that all day if you're an academic set. That's probably going to eat up, 3 months just to transcribe before you've even begin analysis. So management of time is a huge sort of issue, because sometimes there's a lot of great questions, but we just won't tackle them because unless you're in a huge team and you have a lot of funding, they're just not going to be feasible. So often we design things to our availability. Not, we don't do it in the vacuum again. We do it really, you think, I've got a month, what can I do in a month? And then you design your question around that rather than the opposite. So as we finish this afternoon, I'm going to give you a little question that fits into this. So when we work like this, I said it's important to think about collaboration. Something that's going to come up in educational research is if you're working collaboration, what kind of collaboration are you working under? And I wanted you to see if you knew the difference between multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. So if we talk about multidisciplinary research or interdisciplinary research, what's the difference? How do you understand both? It's a very pertinent question. I've been to two job interviews where I was asked this question. So, if think of it early, and if you ever get asked again in your career, you'll have the answer. So I will put a forum thread where you can answer that, and then I will recap for you at 4:30 when we get together. So enjoy Unit 2. Try and do as much as you can. I know it's a short day today because you'll be coming out of the introduction, the MED sort of introduction session at 2, and we'll meet at 4:30. So you have 2.5 hours to do some of this. But I hope you enjoy the work, and I hope you move a little bit forward in your formulation of your blog for assignment 1. So we'll see you at 4:30.